Shame, it's one of the most painful and persistent after effects of childhood trauma. It can quietly shape our entire lives, sometimes without us even realizing where it comes from. So, in this explainer, we're going to dig into how to heal from it, based on the incredible work of therapist Beverly Engel.
We're going to be diving into the core ideas from her book, It Wasn't Your Fault, which really offers a clear path to freeing yourself from that debilitating shame. And the key, you'll see, is the transformative power of self-compassion. So, to really get what we're talking about, let's start with a story about Emily. She walked into therapy thinking, maybe it was just low self-esteem. But the real issue, it ran so much deeper. Her story really gets to the very heart of how shame can just operate silently in the background of our lives. Does any of that sound familiar? That nagging feeling of being somehow less than, or maybe feeling like you don't quite deserve good things, or finding it almost impossible to stand up for yourself? If it does, that's exactly what we're getting into right now.
Okay, so let's get right into the heart of the problem. Because before you can find a cure, you have to understand the poison, right? We need to know, why is the shame that comes from childhood abuse so incredibly sticky? Why does it linger for so long?
And look, this isn't just feeling guilty about something you did. Engel talks about this debilitating shame as a deep, core belief that something is fundamentally wrong with who you are. It's this feeling that you're damaged goods, and it ends up coloring every single interaction you have.
And this is where Engel's argument gets so powerful. She literally calls this deep shame a poison. And you know what? A poison needs a specific antidote. For her, that antidote is without a doubt compassion. And make no mistake, the stakes here are incredibly high. The U.S. Department of Health and Human Services found that about 30% of abused children may go on to abuse their own kids. This shows how shame isn't just a personal problem. It can become this devastating cycle that passes down through generations.
So, the big question is why? Why does this shame get its hooks in so deep in the first place? Well, to figure that out, we have to rewind a bit and look at how a child's mind processes the world, especially a world that's scary and doesn't make any sense. Okay, so little kids are naturally egocentric. Their whole world revolves around them. And that's not a bad thing, it's just how they're wired at that age. So when something awful, like abuse, happens, their brain immediately tries to connect the dots. And the easiest dot to connect it to? Themselves. This must be happening because I'm bad. And what's wild is that this self-blame, it's actually a survival strategy. Think about it. For a child, it is so much safer to believe I must be bad than to accept the terrifying reality that the people they depend on for everything are the ones who are unsafe. And this slide just lays out the stark reality of it. As a kid, you were smaller, you were weaker, you depended on adults for everything. Food, shelter, safety. You had no real power to fight back or get away, and your brain simply wasn't developed enough to make the kind of choices an adult can. So this idea that you were somehow responsible, it's not logical. It's what a child's mind creates to survive something that makes no sense. Okay, so we've identified the poison and we see how it gets into our system. Now, let's talk about the solution. Let's explore the antidote that Engel offers, self-compassion. Now, self-compassion, it's not about making excuses or feeling sorry for yourself. It's about treating yourself with the same kindness you'd give to a friend who's going through a hard time. It's basically turning toward yourself and saying, wow, this is really hard, and it's okay that I feel this way. It's a radical act of validating your own experience. And I love this comparison because it shows the huge difference between self-pity and self-compassion. Self-pity just pulls you down this rabbit hole of poor me, but self-compassion, it acknowledges the pain with kindness. And that's what opens a door to actually moving forward. And hey, this isn't just some fluffy feel-good concept. The science is actually pretty solid on this. Research shows that self-compassion is linked to real, measurable benefits, like less depression and anxiety. It literally helps calm down your brain's threat system, which is often on high alert for trauma survivors, and it helps you build resilience from the inside out. Okay, that all sounds great, right? But how do you actually do it? How do you put it into practice? So let's get practical and look at a first step you can take on this healing journey. It all starts with this one simple but incredibly profound shift in perspective. Instead of asking yourself, what is wrong with me? You start asking, what happened to me? That one little change in wording is a total game changer.
See, when you start looking at your behaviors not as proof that you're broken, but as completely understandable ways you learn to cope with trauma, everything changes. Suddenly, you're not a bad person. You're a person who was hurt. And that reframe is what opens the door for real empathy for yourself. Here's a small thing you can try, especially if you struggle with shame. For so many of us, even taking a compliment feels, well, impossible. So Ingle suggests this really simple but powerful exercise. Next time someone gives you a compliment, instead of immediately batting it away, just pause, take a breath, and imagine you're really letting that compliment in. It's like a tiny workout for your brain, teaching it to accept goodness. All right, this brings us to the final, really big piece of the puzzle, learning how to rewrite that inner script, how to turn that harsh inner critic into a nurturing, supportive inner voice. You know that inner critic, that voice that calls you names, that keeps a running tally of all your failures? A lot of the time, that's not even your voice. It's the voice of an abuser or a critical parent that you've internalized. So the goal here is to consciously, deliberately build a new voice inside your head. One that sounds more like a kind, loving parent. One that accepts you, encourages you, and reminds you of your strengths. And let's be clear, this is not about pretending you're perfect or never make mistakes. It's about totally changing how you respond when you do. That inner critic just shames you for the past. But compassionate self-correction, it's all about the future. It's about saying, okay, that happened. What can I learn from this? How can I grow? All with kindness. And please never forget this. The fact that you survived what you went through, that took courage, strength, determination, all of these things. Those qualities are still inside you. They are the bedrock you can build your healing on. You have to give yourself credit for that. So in the end, healing from this kind of shame is really an act of defiance. It's you reclaiming your life. It's about finally, truly understanding that what happened to you was never your fault, and that deep shame you've been carrying, it was never yours to begin with. It's about turning to that child inside you and finally offering the kindness and compassion they always, always deserved.